At $200, a Super Nintendo setup costs twice as much as the old system. For the money, the company promises better pictures, sound, and adventure. Now you're playing with power, superpower. You're the king, I tell you! The king!
Only for Super NES. Only on Super NES. You're listening to the SNES podcast with your host, Soul Blazer.
Hello, folks. Welcome to the Super NES podcast, episode number 217. I am Greg, joined always by Joe.
Hello.
And this time around, we're looking at a game neither one of us have played for in the past. Neither one of us, I think, had even heard about this game in the past. So that is one of the glorious things about Super NES. The library is so huge. There's all kinds of like unknown games, hidden gems, and whatnot, just like living in the library. And this is definitely one of them. So hidden game. We'll get into the gem part of it later on for sure. But anyway, I don't remember who picked this out. Who picked this out at this point? This is probably mine because this kind of seems like a game I would kind of gravitate toward to anyway. But we're covering the very oddly, and if you ask me, badly named title, J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings Volume 1, which, not to be confused with a computer game, also with the same long name from 1990, by the way. So between that and between all the other games that come out for Lord of the Rings since then, this one can be a challenge to find online if you're looking for it. So just like a heads up about that. So I think the reason for the titling is because of the rights issues. Because I know that. I don't know if this was still the case by the case by 1994, but 10 years previously there was a Lord of the Rings game that was being made at the Atari 2600 that was mostly finished but never released. And the reason the game never got finished is because they had a rights issue because of the time at least. One set of people held the rights for the book titles, and another set of people held the rights for the media rights. So they couldn't get permission from both groups. Basically, is what happened in that case. So just like the old Dungeons and Dragons games, like the flying television. Which are very good games for the time period, by the way. TSR, who made D&D at the time, insisted upon a very bizarre titling and encapsulation scheme with the game titles. It had to be called Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Cartridge. With a whole bunch of weird trademark issues and whatnot included with it. I'm sure the same thing. Anyway, that's long-winded way of saying. I'm sure the same thing's going on here with the rights issues, which is why the game had to be called the way it is.
So that is a theory. This is mine. And you probably will talk about this when you go into the history, but this is primarily based on the animated film by Rankin Bass.
Oh yeah, I heard that was a thing.
So that film actually is, it's just called Lord of the Rings, and it covers the Fellowship, and it covers Two Towers in that one movie.
Yeah.
Then later on, they released a Return of the King standalone animated film with The Hobbit that they had made earlier. That is the Lord of the Rings trilogy before we got the proper trilogy from Peter Jackson. Right, so in that sense, this game, and we'll get into it, covers up to Gandalf's death and the Balrog fight, which is right where Fellowship ends. So technically it would be Volume 1 because that's only halfway through the movie. They still got to do the Two Towers and whatnot. Yeah. But yeah, that's how I interpreted that, why it's Volume 1. They anticipated it to be well received and have a Volume 2. So.
And very possibly Volume 3 because because this game follows mostly the events of the first book, the Fellowship of the Ring. The book actually goes on a bit longer than where this game leaves off, but for the most part, but for the most part, the game does try to adapt the major events like first book. So anyway, so that's a good segue for talking about the actual background, like the background like this. I think most people nowadays have probably seen at least one of the Lord of the Rings movies because how popular the Peter Jackson series was, but the books themselves were around for a good long time before that.
Yeah.
For sure, because the actual first book, The Fellowship of the Ring, was published in 1954. So the books have been around for a long time before that. It was followed up by The Two Towers and The Return of the King. So basically, all together, the trilogy, just called the trilogy. It's just called The Lord of the Rings. So, the books were popular for sure, but I think I'm sure a lot more folks read the books after the movies came out because to compare and contrast how the books actually were. I never actually read the books myself, but I understand the books are actually a hard but not a challenging read from what I've been told. There definitely are things that are easier. There are things easier to digest, but they're also not the hardest things to read out there either. So
yeah. So this is probably one of my favorite trilogy of books. But that being said, it's kind of like reading, and this is obviously no comparison, but it's the best analogy I can think of. It's like reading an old English version of the Bible.
Okay, yep.
Whereas, like, more recent reproductions or reprints of the books have the new King James version. Well, Lord of the Rings has sort of the same thing. It was very old English, and it was very history and world building. He really padded those books out, and it's not he padded them out in a bad way. That's what Tolkien loved to do, was build the world. And I mean, he had the Silmarillion, which is literally just basically him creating the Elvish language and breaking that down, and songs of celebration and things of events that happened with the elves to explain everything, and great companion piece too.
But to be fair, that wasn't published during his lifetime. His son's actually the one who finished his father's notes.
Correct.
That. So.
But still, the fact that he
had created all that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, exactly. So, but my parents actually have a first edition run of the Lord of the Rings books in storage, by the way, which my mom got when she was a teenager, which is probably worth some money these days, I think. But
yeah, I would definitely think so.
But we don't know. The books have been in storage for a while, so.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So So the Lord of the Rings is definitely a thing, but like you said before, the animated movie was a thing and whatnot. But it was actually, I'm sure it was the Peter Jackson movies that actually put the franchise the franchise to the prime public consciousness about things. So. And those movies are pretty daunting to watch, especially if you want to tackle the extended editions. But there's that. You've probably seen that writing. You've probably seen that writing meme joke where it's like somebody boards a plane from the U.S. to Australia and asks him to how long the flight is, and the flight is like 16 hours. It's like, okay, just enough time for this. He boots up the copy of the Lord of the Rings extended trilogy to watch during the flight. So yeah, if you watch the end of the editions, the extended editions, that's a haul. So, so the popularity of the movies has triggered a whole bunch of other Lord of the Rings games. Some were inspired by the franchise than others. Shadows of Mordor being the pretty famous example of that. So. So the fact this game came out for the Super NES is kind of surprising. I mean, it's surprising with the popularity, because obviously people did know about the franchise in the books back then, but it wasn't like it was 15 years later, like when the movies came out. So they just have several surprising things about this game for sure. So the game came out in North America in October 1994. It also came out in Europe several months later, like in May of 1995. The game was actually developed and published by Interplay, which most people, especially the old timers like myself, I probably should say, so associated as being a company that made games for computers.
Yeah.
They were very good. They were very good developing publisher for computer games. For a long time. Star Trek games, Fall games was theirs. Many other franchises and games. Descent was one of their properties. They did a lot of stuff. But starting in the late 80s, they started also branching out like to make games for consoles as well, because they saw because of the video game market come back and forth because Nintendo, that kind of stuff. So they either developed or published several NES games, such as like Swords and Serpents was one of their games, Total Recall was one of their games, et cetera, et cetera. So, and this is also one of their games. They got the rights to do this with like the appropriate people, of course, and made the game. So, the games you mentioned follows most of the major events of the first book, The Fellowship of the Ring. There are, of course, changes in missions made as required by it. The game itself is actually an action RPG game, which it's like the same vein of like of Legend of Zelda. Actually, the game this reminds me most of. Especially because of the multiplayer nature of the game. We haven't covered this in the podcast yet, Joe, but we will cover it eventually, so I'm not sure you played it yet. Secret of Mana. This game reminds me of that game like in many ways.
So I have heard of Secret of Mana. I've seen some gameplay. So I also came to that conclusion while playing this game. I was like, because like the box art is very box art, and right up on the back of the box is very misleading. But we could talk about that in addition. But it totes that basically. This is the first multiplayer RPG that is available on the SNES, and I'm like, no, it's not.
Well, you do have. Well, yeah. Yeah, the quote is misleading, and it's misleading for sure. Like, I know what they meant, because it's like in Secret of Mana, you only had secondary control of the characters.
Right.
Like in this game, you have play. In this game, like your friends over, you actually, they actually can't take direct control.
Right. Right.
So, and actually, also, what's cool about this, what's cool about this game is that this game's actually one of a handful of games that supports the super multi-tap. So it actually has support for like 8 players can play this game at once, which is like mind blowing. So it's like because I said before, the game basically follows the events of the book. We start off with like playing Frodo, and then picking up the members of the Fellowship as you go along in the game. And if you're playing by yourself, the AI will control those people. To varying degrees of effectiveness, we'll get to that in a moment. But if you have humans over, the humans can control those games directly too. And from what I understand, it's like from doing research on things like online, this game's actually very different if you actually have like a full like group of people over playing the game with you
to
that point for sure. Because there are 9 people of the Fellowship, somebody had to get the axe. In this case, Bromore was the one who didn't make the cut.
Yeah.
He shows up in the game for like a single brief appearance. So Samwise, Perdigan, Murderlock, Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, and Gandalf are the ones you actually like recruit and can be played by the people as you go through the game. So also reflecting the fact that Interplay was a computer company at its roots, this game's also one of the handful of games that supports the mouse.
Yeah.
So again, cool feature. So Yeah, so some very interesting ideas for this game for sure, like going like right into it. So basically the game is the game just goes through the major events of the book where you're trying to recruit the fellowship. They make your way to the mines of more pass through Bree, pass through Riverdale, they make your way to the mines of Moria to have the final fight against the Bala creature where the game ends. So, like I said before, it's an action RPG game. Pretty typical like Zelda, Secret of Mana, whatever play games like that sort. So, let's say I probably have more experience with this genre than you do, Joe. So I'm curious to hear about your thoughts as you play this game, and if they mirrored my impressions at all. Because there's several major things about this game that struck me right off the bat, and I'm curious to see what you thought of. I'm curious to see like you came to the same impressions and or conclusions.
All right. Well, let me tell you. So, I've been playing Shadowrun for the SNES for my podcast, right across the Roundup. So, I've been very RPG heavy as of late. And that's a point and click adventure, but that pretty much like the way the combat here almost felt like it was in there. So, for me, it was like very hit or miss. Sometimes I would swing and I'd hit a wolf and the wolf would die. Great. Other times I would hit the wolf and he would completely clip through me, hit me, and then like you have to turn around to be able to attack him and everything. You're just taking hits after hits after hits. I got mauled by a pack of wolves quite a few times before I finally was able to kind of maneuver my way and get to the first party member that you come across, which is Pippin. And of course, like I got up there and Pippin's like, I'm not going anywhere because of the wolves. So, after already dying twice, I had to go back and kill more wolves. And I mean, getting a party member wasn't like a huge game changer, but it helps a little bit. For sure. And, like, I don't know, it just felt like I said, after playing, like, Shadowrun, like, it felt like combat here was kind of like Shadowrun, where it's, like, dice rolls every time that you attack. And I definitely felt like I was rolling ones every once in a while. And that could be, maybe I wasn't lined up with the enemy properly. Maybe, the hitbox is smaller than what I thought it was. It could be anything. I'm not, faulting the game for that, because as you move on through the game, you encounter like snakes, bats, orcs, trolls, and, by the time you reach them, you should be leveled up pretty well, and usually one hit will take care of most of them. And I really didn't see too much of an issue there, but it really, at the beginning, really felt like the game was against me more than helping me.
Let me just ask you a quick question because it's relevant. How did you feel about the fact that the developers made the choice not to show any numbers on screen?
So, obviously, if there were numbers on screen, I would have known that I was hitting them. And that, I think, would have registered at least a little better and made me feel maybe different about the controls. But, I mean, if I'm sitting there swinging and I'm still hitting zeros, you know what I mean? Like, it's still kind of one of those things where it's like, same experience. But, it's an RPG. It's nice to have those numbers, but it's not necessary.
Okay, cool. So anything else you want to say?
As far as combat goes, look, I'm going to be real here. Your companions are kind of pointless. They will wander off and get lost. They will also easily be killed. So you can actually hold the left or right button and gain control of your companion. Especially in the early game, I definitely suggest you do that to be able to keep them alive, at least until you can level up and then, be able to move on your own without the companions if need be. And But yeah, I mean, that was those, as far as like the core gameplay, those were the two biggest things that I had issues with.
So I didn't have quite the same problem with combat that you did. I actually thought combat in this game like fairly easy, but it's like, yes, you can die if you're not careful with things, but I think that as long as you're sensible about your experience levels and equipment, this is actually I think it's actually like a fairly easy game to go through as far as an action RPG game goes of this sort. Definitely easier than Secret of Mana. Definitely easier than Zelda. So I do agree with the hitboxes can be a bit of a problem sometimes. But sometimes you definitely do take more damage than you should. But it's like, especially later on in the game when you have like AI party members, it really would. It rapidly became a non-issue. But having said that, I agree with you totally that the AI in this game sucks. There is a gather button you can use, but its effectiveness is very limited, unfortunately. So, and the AI tends to zero in upon an enemy or target and just like make a beeline for them, which doesn't help things by one bit. So, I mean, it's not it's not unplayable. You can work around it. It just the AI is more frustrating than it should be. I think because like I said before, cool idea. The fact that you're actually assembling the fellowship and you actually can eventually have 8 people on screen.
You're right.
But if you have friends over playing the game with you, whole different experience, I'm sure. But trying to wrangle the AI together, that is a challenge, like for sure. So. But that also segues into something else about this game I really did not like. Most of the gameplay is fetch quests. And these fetch quests are terrible. It's like, I don't mind fetch quests in most RPGs because those fetch quest games are like, they're beginner quests. They're quick, they're easy, whatever. So it's like, okay, you do a few of these to drop the game with, get some experience and some items. Okay, cool. Go off to bigger, better things. But in this game, though, most of the game you're doing fetch quests. But even the game tries to disguise them as being something else. It's like they're so fetch quests. Like use the example that you were just talking about, Joe. When you're trying to recruit like Samwise, defeating the wolves so he's safe. That's a fetch quest.
Right.
I mean, really. But so it's like I don't know. It's like the game didn't have to be fetch quests the whole way through because you have games like Secret of Mana which show how you could properly do a game like this. So I don't know why the developers chose to make the game of this nature, but it really bogs down the gameplay. You just have to do like fetch quest after fetch quest after fetch quest. But so it sounds like you have the same experience.
Yeah, that was one of the things that really bothered me about this game because there was. And it's not just, to pick up party members. It's sometimes to advance the story. Mm-hmm. Like, I can't remember where exactly I was, but, like, I went to walk into one area, and, like, there's a guy there, and he's like, you don't have X number of whatever, and, like, it's one of those things, it's like, I gotta go back and collect stuff just to be able to progress, like, that's the point where I was just like, man, I'm done. Like, I was just like, But, yeah, I mean, there's definitely worse things that could be in the game. Like, encounter rates could have been like, literally like 5 every 2 steps. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I actually think encounter rate in this game like pretty good. So
I can't complain too much. But yeah, the fetch quests, like, that's just not my thing. It really isn't. Like, if this was a platformer, I would have been prepared. I have to go get X amount of coins or whatever. Like, that I expect.
Like our traditional RPG, we do fetch quests every now and then.
Correct.
So,
correct.
But
yes.
yeah. But no, I agree with you 100%. So. let's talk about the graphics. The graphics of this game, I think, are a mixed bag. So, so on the bright side, I thought the graphics were like very good and like most of the game. I especially loved the status screens with like the hand drawn the charcoal,
Yep.
almost charcoal like
Yep.
character portraits and how everything's like displayed on the screen and whatnot. Very nice touch. The graphics themselves look. The game does great presentation about the whole like book the book roots, because like the story is told to you, the pages of a book. All the dialogue boxes, the boxes are all like parchments and whatever. It's all very beautifully done to kind of like emulate to evoke the book feel that this game has. That this game has like roots into. So the graphics themselves are detailed and very sharp, like in many areas. Your party members are a bit small, but given the fact how you eventually have 8 of them on screen at one time, yeah, I can allow that. But so the detail on the characters themselves on the south side is very nice. The big problem with the graphics is that they're very, very repetitive. You just see the same stuff over and over and over again, unfortunately. So the title sets being used in this game are just very, very limited. It's like there's a here's a cave, then we do a slight coloring change. Here's a forest, but there's like coloring change. Here's a marsh. So definitely like mixed bag as far as the graphics went.
Yeah, I thought the backgrounds were okay. I felt the sprites are just way too small.
They had to be small because eventually because all these people and monsters on screen at one time that cause issues.
Yeah, no, I completely understand why they did it the way they did it. It's just, I don't know, that's a gripe for me. This is, in my opinion, like seeing your character sprite is like part of the cool part of being in an RPG. Like you connect a bond with that character as you progress through the story, and like it just kind of looked like a stick figure with some clothes animated on it. I don't know. That's just me. I wasn't a huge fan, but I also I don't hate it because I understand it's the Super Nintendo. At some point, you got eight people on the screen, not including the enemies. So I understand if they would have been any bigger and more detailed, memory constraints. That game would have been bogged down big time. So I am grateful that they didn't attempt it.
Yeah, actually, you have to mention that. That's a good segue for something else. The game does run smoothly for the most part until you get 8 people on your fellowship. Then the game really starts to chug.
Yeah.
Luckily, that's only the last 5 minutes of the game. We actually have only 8 people in the game, because I did finish this game because it's a fairly short game. We're talking about. We'll get into that later on, but anyway, yeah, the game runs pretty smoothly. The game runs pretty smoothly for the most part, except for the end. But it's the game also, but the game also has loading times, and I'm like, why does this game have loading times? It's a cart, so yeah. I don't really understand that part. But it's like I think the fact that the interplay is the interplay programmers are mostly computer programmers shows here how this game was made, because of those issues, not because of the fact that I think this game feels in many ways like I think this game feels like it belongs at the computer in many ways. I mean, it shows the fact these developers came working on PC games, because it feels like a PC game in many ways.
Yeah.
The music, however, the music for this game, however, I thought was a high spot. Very good music.
Oh, man, we're definitely going to differ here. Anyways, finish.
I just thought it was a very Lord of the Ring-ish fantasy sounding soundtrack. The sound effects are very good too. The sound effects are very good. The sound effects I thought they were also very good too. So that really loud sort of door noise that they use in the game is very, very well done. I thought, for example. So the quality of the soundtrack was also very good, because they actually they use the Sony chip in the system to like a good effect. I thought it's actually like a very rich sounding soundtrack. I thought so. Yeah, I like the soundtrack of this game quite a bit. Quite a bit. And I thought it was a high point. I'm a little bit surprised to hear that you differ from that.
So I loved hearing that opening music. The opening music felt epic. It made me want to get into the game. So that's where we started. The in-game music is also good, but it also loops and loops and loops and loops, and you can get lost. So that music just keeps going and going and going, and it doesn't change unless you change areas. So for me, it kind of just dragged. I liked it initially, but by the time, it's looped God knows how many times, I was just tired of the music. That being said, though, like when you're in the caves, I don't think that music was fantastic, but I thought it was good. It sets the mood, and it's more about the ambient noise around you. And it really just sets the setting of where you're at and whatnot. So I don't hate the music. I actually think, just like you said, the music is a high point. The problem is that there's not enough of it, in my opinion, or that much of variety. So therefore, it kind of wears on you, and just in my opinion,
sure, I can see that.
Yeah, it just didn't work for me. As a whole, it didn't work. But yeah, I mean, it's fantastic, and it sounds like what you would hear in other fantasy games, it's a bard tune. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's cool. It's cool, and like what you were saying about, sorry, and what you were saying about the charcoal drawings in the status screen, that was the biggest indicator to me that this was based on the movie rather than the book, because that is the exact animation that they have for each character in the movie. So.
No, I definitely understand your point as far as the music goes, and I think I think it's made worse. The music looping. I don't think would be I don't think would be as much of an issue. It wasn't for the fact that the gameplay. So let me drive home this point for people that we haven't made it clear. Not only is the game mostly fetch quests, you're doing a lot of backtracking in the game.
Yes.
And you're also and you need to make maps of the dungeons, because otherwise you'll get so lost. So that all that combined means you're hearing the music a lot more than you would otherwise if the game had been designed better.
Yes.
So because the gameplay limitations, you're hearing the music more than you would in a normal game, which doesn't help things. Hence Joe's point with this. So I used maps going through this game myself, because I sorry for the music. Therefore, me at least, the music didn't wear down as much as it did for Joe. But I do understand totally where Joe's coming from.
So I mean, I could have gone in with a strategy guide or gameplay, whatever, like maps and all that. But I wanted to approach this like it is 1994. I have a Super Nintendo. I have the game. And that's legit all I got.
Prime actually did publish a strategy game, a strategy guide like this game, by the way.
Did they? Okay.
Yes. So they're actually. I was going to mention it later on, because one was included with eBay listings. So,
Gotcha.
Yeah, you could buy a guide to this game back in the day if you want to. So, which I'm like, yeah, those maps are so helpful. So anyway. There's password systems used in this game. Passwords are okay. They're very long passwords, but having said that, because the very sharp, detailed fonts the game uses, there's no problem with confusing characters and whatnot. So I think the passwords would be okay to use back in the day. The game itself is fairly short if you know what you're doing. Most of the walkthroughs on YouTube for this game are like 4 hours, give or take. So, not a very long game if you come to the game armed with a map and rough sense what you're doing. So, the game the game, obviously, as we said before, they planned at least the game's ending's a bit abrupt because they planned to do a sequel of this game. So at least one sequel, probably two. I imagine they were going to do other games covering the rest of the books. But because this game didn't sell very well, of course, that never happened. So it's a horrible idea to call something Volume 1 if you're not sure Volume 2 is ever going to come out, by the way.
Yeah.
Let me just say that out there. I hate when things do that. At least like the computer game that shares its name, they did come out with Volume 2 for that at least. So
yeah.
This one though was just Volume 1, and because Volume 1 because it didn't sell very well, that's it. So, and it's not hard to understand why this game. It's not hard to understand why this game didn't sell very well because we'll get into our closing thoughts here in just a moment. But I totally understand why this game was not like a huge hit.
So I just want to interject a little tidbit about the password.
Sure.
So yeah, why they didn't go with the battery backup and they did passwords, I don't know. But
cost.
Yeah, exactly. I know the reason. It was a facetious question. Anyways.
Yeah.
So like the password system can actually be manipulated.
Yes.
There's
one of the things about it. Yep.
Which is nice.
Yeah.
Because if you are one of those people who like your party members and they die, it's funny.
Oh yeah, we forgot to mention that. Yeah.
So it's funny because a lot of the places that you look around on the internet will tell you if your party member dies, that's it. You can't get them back. But that's not true because you can actually manipulate the password system to get them back. But also, if you really want to be sneaky, you can actually manipulate the password to get party members before you even meet them. So there is potential to start this game off with all 8 party members.
I was going to mention a couple passwords here toward the end. That were very good for that purpose.
I just had to bring that up because I was like, you mentioned the password system.
This game for obvious reasons is a Game Genie gold mine.
Yeah,
so
I bet.
There are like tons of passwords that have code you can use this game to manipulate the password feature like and whatnot. So, but anyway, yeah. But there's no regular way to bring somebody back in the game if they die.
Correct.
But having said that, password manipulation even back then, because the Game Genie was very easy to do. So, but anyway. So, final thoughts. So I don't hate this game. So I do understand what the developers are trying to do here with this. So it's like I think the game has some things going forward. It has some very unique ideas for sure. The whole multi-tab with 8 people playing the game. The mouse system trying to emulate the feel of the book of the movie, whatever. This is a more easier action RPG game for sure. So when I think all things considered, I think this game mirrors the major plot points of the book pretty well for the most part. Just that the game's not great at any point. But the game's also not terrible at any point either, I thought. It's like, the game's average the whole way through. So there's like no high spots, no low spots. It's just like it's average the whole way through. So if you're willing to put the time into the game to get into, and that's the thing I think this game, and it's the reason, there's also a big reason why this game didn't sell very well back then. This game is possible to get enjoyment and fun out of, but it's far harder to get into than it should be. Really, for a game of this type. Action RPGs are designed to be quick and easy games to get into, i.e. see Zelda. This game is much more complicated to get into and enjoy than it should be, and that's a huge turnoff for the game. So I understand that. So I understand the hate this game gets online because it's like if you just look at the game online through YouTube or just play for a few minutes, it's very easy to bounce off this game. If you love games of this type, Lord of the Rings games and/or action RPGs, and you're willing to give the time and effort this game deserves, you definitely can have fun. You definitely can have fun with this game. And as I said before, it's a pretty short game to begin with anyway. So it's just that unfortunately, because the game's design, and again, I And again, I lay the blame of this in interplay because the developers for this game were probably computer developers and not really used to making console games. So hence some of the poor design games and choices that this game has. It just Lord of the Rings is a lot harder to get into than it should be. If you're willing to put the time, energy, and effort into it, and have maps handy, you definitely get fun with this game. But the average person, especially nowadays, playing this game, it's like why bother? Because like there's so many other there's so many other better games out there which do this thing so much better than this does. I.e. Zelda, i.e. Secret of Mana. Insert other action RPG games here for sure. So it's like yeah. So I can So I don't hate the game. I don't love it either. I think this game's like meh the whole way through. Is the best I can say about it. It's like and like I just said, the only people I can suggest playing this game, especially nowadays in 2023, is if you're like either a big Lord of the Rings fan or a big action RPG fan, looking for an obscure game in the genre to play. And the game is like pretty obscure. We'll get into pricing here in a bit, but if you're a huge lover of those games and are going to get and give this game the time and effort it deserves, you can have some of this game. Otherwise, I think especially nowadays, this game's a hard pass.
Yeah, and I agree with everything you said, especially the meh and mediocre part. This very much reminded me of a game that I played on the original Xbox called The Hobbit. It came out in 2003.
I remember that game. Yep.
It was done by Sierra, and like the gameplay was very much Zelda-esque, which I think was a good way to go for that game. But it was one of those that, like, it wasn't better than, but it also wasn't less than. It was literally middle of the road. It does what it says it's going to do, and that's it. And that's very much what this Lord of the Rings game does. It does what it says it's going to do. It takes you through what would be, quote-unquote, Volume 1. It hits all the story beats, and it gets you there, but it doesn't really pull anything fantastical while it's doing it. It's just kind of there waving its hand at you saying, come on, come play with me.
I do give the developers credit for realizing the game of this type either had to be an action RPG or a traditional RPG, because like a platformer wouldn't have worked.
Correct.
So it's like, the developers knew what they wanted to do and they did it. It just the game just like falls hard in its face as far as execution goes, unfortunately.
Yeah. And before we completely wrap up, I just want to say we did mention this supports the SNES Mouse.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And, of course, you can use your mouse for your computer with it if you're running emulation. Right-clicking is the way that you attack with the mouse, but it's also how you open your inventory. So, yeah, it gets really annoying real quick because it's like you can quickly tap. You're supposed to basically click and hold the button essentially to be able to attack, or you quick click to get into the menu. And obviously, if you're playing, you're going to be kind of quick clicking. So, it would be like attack menu, attack menu, attack menu. It was really really frustrating, and I wanted to specifically save it to the end because of the fact I did not get past the Shire using the mouse, so I didn't want to be like, oh well, this was my experience, and whatnot. But yeah, so I mean, if you can somehow figure out how to get past that hurdle, I think that could be an interesting gameplay with just the mouse. But it was nice, and like you said, like it totally with the mouse, it made me feel like it was a early PC game rather than a Super Nintendo game. So I will give them credit. They did what they needed to do to be able to present the game as it is. But it is disappointing that we didn't get anything extra out of it.
Yeah, I think Volume 2 would have been interesting to see for sure. Maybe they would have like learned. I have to imagine. I have to imagine that game. I have to imagine that game like would have been like better designed than this one was.
So it's funny that you say that because I was thinking the same thing, and I did look up video for Volume 2 for the PC.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It just looks like more of the same.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't watch a full gameplay or review of it. I just quickly clicked on the video and watched like the first little bit. But yeah, it just looks like they used the same engine. They just kind of moved everything over and continued with the story. So they were probably both developed probably around the same time, is my guess.
No, not quite, because the computer game Lord of the Rings was 1990. So,
okay, all right.
7 years earlier. They were, however, like both interplay games.
Okay.
So, the computer game is a more traditional RPG compared to like the action RPG of this. So, obviously, the interplace bosses were like, okay, take this game as inspiration for your game, but let's do it this way instead. So it's like, like we said. The Lord of the Rings really they have to be an action RPG or an RPG game for it to work. If they had gone, I think the reason they didn't go straight RPG was because they realized they'd done an RPG game on this like Recruiter several years previously, and they wanted to do something a bit different.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, yeah. So They definitely would have been more of the same, but if they just said, they just improved the AI and gotten rid of all the fetch quests, it would have been like a much more like better game.
Yeah.
So I don't know, who knows, but so. So reviews of this game, we've been saying this a lot recently, but recently seems like with our last several episodes. Again, very, very mixed reviews. Again, not everybody hated this game back then. So it's like, I'll start off with a bad review first. GamePro, for example, gave it one of the worst reviews of this game. They just called it boring, like long romps, small character and enemy sprites I talked about before, limited character upgrade features, which is true. The AI and the difficulty, the difficulty being low. They basically panned the game for all the reasons we already said previously about this game, is why it was bad. So, on the other hand, however, EGM gave it a more modest score of 6.6 out of 10. So. Calling it like a slower paced RPG for more deliberate playing, it has rewards a patient player, which again is true. It's like I was saying before. If you're willing to be patient and give this game the time it deserves, you have some fun out of it. So, weirdly enough, I think both reviews are correct. It depends on how you're looking at it.
Yeah.
And again, modern reviews also say the same thing about it. 1UP, for example, when they reviewed the game in 2004, only gave it 2 out of 10. Whereas like Video Games Computer Entertainment gave it 7 out of 10. So it's like, again, very mixed reviews depending upon what you're looking for, I guess. So, but this is actually a case where where I actually weirdly agree with both the bad and good reviews, saying, okay, you guys are both correct in what you're saying. Right. So, very weird about that. So, as we talked about before, the pass system in this game is very easy to manipulate. If you want to just the two best passwords I think to use are the passwords that give you all the passwords they give you all 8 characters that get the function to start the game with. Be warned, however, that the game will chug if you do that. However, because I said, with 8 people on screen plus the enemies, the game does start to have slowdown issues. So the other password I think that's very handy is starting off with all characters, rings, and gems. So all you got to do at that point is just go to the final boss and beat it. So eBay. This falls in the category of a game that's pretty rare, but also not very desirable. So prices of this game are not really. The price of this game are pretty reasonable, all things considered, considering how rare this game is. Because I'm sure, as I said before, it didn't sell very well. So if this game was more well known, I'm sure these prices like be a lot higher. But if you're a collector, you get this game for a pretty good price as far as Super NES prices go. 30 copies of this game were currently listed on eBay at the time of me doing research. 15 copies of the game are currently sold. Not the easy game to find. For example, I could not find any CIB copies of this game which sold recently. So CIB pricing, I'm having to use prices for like what people are asking for this game currently. So, which I don't like doing because I prefer to use sold prices, but but it is what it is. Like I said, there's not the most common game out there. So, these prices include shipping. Cart price of this game starting from $20 to $38. Like I said, for not bad, all things considering for this game.
Yeah.
So. A copy of the game with the manual and a copy of that primer guide I mentioned before. So so recently, like very cheap for $2.
Wow.
So, that was a good buy, I thought. So, CIV pricing, as I said, there weren't any sold copies, sold examples of this in the last 9 days. People were asking anywhere from $71 to $308 this game CIB, which seems fair based upon the prices for how much the card copies they went for.
Yeah.
So, and somebody else had a steel copy scheme that this game listed up for sale for pretty reasonable $325. So, so card pricing fairly cheap if you want it for your collection. So, like I said before, I'm sure this game would be worth a lot more money if it was more desirable. Luckily for you out there, it's not. So, anyway, that's the game. Interesting game to play for sure. I never heard of this back in the day. I never would have played it if I had it for the podcast. So, I am grateful for the podcast at least for that reason. So, you have any final thoughts about this game before we close it out, Joe?
So, it's hard to recommend it because it's very mediocre, and I there's a certain type of person who would get fun out of this. It wasn't me, I can tell you that. But like I said, I didn't hate it. So I would recommend. The cart's cheap enough. Even if you don't collect Super Nintendo, but you have a Super Nintendo, absolutely get the cart. Play it on the real thing. But if you still think $30 is a bit much, emulation, man. Emulation is the way to go. And if you really want to torture yourself, make sure you enable that SNES Mouse emulation so that you can have frustrating clicks while you play.
Yeah. No, for sure. Yeah. So, but unfortunately, I just don't think it plays computer console games that great. Unfortunately, for one reason or another, it's like they tried, but compared to their rich computer catalog, their console efforts were not quite as good. Unfortunately, I think just because maybe just like because of their not having people on staff who had experience making console games, I guess.
Yeah.
But anyway, so Swords and Serpents for the NES, I think, is probably their best game for sure, because that's a very interesting action, interesting dungeon crawler take. And again, it's a game that supports multi-tap with like 4 people. So,
yeah.
But. That's a game that supports password manipulation, because it's like that game's very unique, because it's like each character in the game has a password and the game itself is a password.
Yeah.
So like play the game, you have to put in play the game, you have to put in like 5 passwords.
Yeah.
So. However, that system does allow you to mix and match character passwords around to your heart's content.
Yeah.
So, pros and cons of that system for sure. So, anyway, so that's the game. So next time on the podcast, we're looking curiously enough at another video game adaptation of a very classic, beloved fantasy franchise. A book also originally. We're looking at the Wizard of Oz game, which is a platformer this time, though it does have some action. Although it does have some puzzle aspects to it also, if I want to understand. So, again, never played the game. Curious to see how it turns out. So, tune in next time for that episode.
Yeah.
Thank you as always for listening to the podcast. We appreciate it. If you have any questions, feedback, comments, suggestions, feel free to leave on our Facebook page. You also can send me an email if you want to at thesnapodcast@yahoo.com. Joe, how can they reach you at?
We're just going to leave it at, you can find me on Facebook. Watch out, not family friendly. And you can get me on still Twitter to me, so at JOESUX30.
Okay, so as always, thank you for giving us a few minutes of Dave. I really appreciate it. Stay safe, everybody. Be well. We'll catch you again next time. Later.
Bye.
Nintendo controls 80% of the video market. But no matter how you play the game, or which game you play, things definitely have come a long way since Pac-Man.
Now you're playing with power. Steampunk